King of the Canadian Hill. How haunted is our Ontario? Located 22 kilometers from Toronto, even though this is a borough of Toronto since they amalgamated in 1998, 416 represent with a population of 700,000 souls, is indeed Scarborough, Ontario. Near the Scarborough Bluffs on 201 Guildwood Parkway, surrounding the Guildwood Park and Gardens, is the Guild Inn. A World War I colonel built it in 1914. It was his mansion, his house, to get away from it all the war of World War I. And then it was sold in 1921 to a China mission for missionary students, then bought and sold and turned into the Guild Inn in 1932, and that was one big-ass art studio. And then it was turned into a naval base called the HMCS Bytown 2 in 1942, then into a hospital called the Scarborough Hall in 1947 for patients of PTSD. Then it was turned back into the Guild Inn, and now it's a facility for meets and greets, event planning, and special event spaces and venues. It also has a bistro inside of it as well. However, back in the day, pseudo-Georgian chateau style, there was servants' quarters, nurseries, guest wing, giant main living quarters and bedrooms, a tunnel coming from the house to Lake Ontario, with an old fireplace as old as the house, with architectural relics on the ground surrounding the house and now facility. A sculpture studio, log cabin, and an office building are still on the site to this day, with the old guild house, and some say the eerie tunnel that goes from the house to Lake Ontario still exists as well. And some say that the bistro is sitting right on top of that entrance to the tunnel. If and when you enter that building at the Guild Inn in Scarborough, you will hear sounds of gunshots, rapping, knocking, moaning, crying, piano playing, furniture moving, doors opening and closing, shouts, footsteps. Where have I heard this stuff before? Hymns and choir singing? Also, if you do find that tunnel that's possibly in and around that bistro I was told, the feeling of cold and sorrow, anguish, nausea, the feeling from eerie breezes and odd scents. Okay, I've scented this crap before, I think. You'll find all this and more at the Scarborough Bluffs, the Guild Inn. As I wrapped up my hauntingly visit and spooky supper from that sweet, sweet bistro in the Guild Inn, I was approached by Ingrid Itzkitsky in the parking lot of the Guild Inn, and she told me a frightening story that did not actually happen on the grounds of Guild Park and Gardens or in the Guild Inn. No, peeps. This was on Guildwood Parkway, just across the street. 30 years ago, her family moved into their new house, which was an old house on Guildwood Parkway. Not across the street from Guild Inn, but kind of sort of adjacent down the street a few blocks away, but still on Guildwood Parkway. The kids on the street and neighbors say that the previous family that lived there kept an insane family member up in the attic. That family member supposedly died, and then the family quickly moved out, never to be seen or heard from again. While sleeping that very first night, Ingrid told me that she can hear high-pitched laughter, the sounds of pitter-patter and thumping from the ceiling above her. For months on end, it kept her up at night, but she didn't want to tell her parents because the stress from the move, the stress from a new job and a new life was on their shoulders, and she didn't want to add any more stress. Night after night, the laughter, the pitter-patter, the thumps continued. And then an eerie, ghostly stain from the ceiling began to form. Concerned, scared out of her mind, Ingrid finally told her mother and father of this chilling event one morning. Ingrid told me that her father, having a smoke in the slits with some bacon, slammed down that beer, frustrated, and told her that there was nothing there. It was all good. Don't you worry. But she was convinced that this eerie thing up in that attic, this ghostly activity, was about to get her. The frustrated father then finished off his slits, took a long drag of his smoke, and then stormed upstairs, then stormed up the attic ladder, and decided to take a peek to reassure his daughter that everything was all right and that there was nothing up in that attic. As he opened that attic door and took a peek up into that eerie attic darkness, he was just telling his daughter that there was nothing up there, but then she saw the look on his face as he squinted, then wide-eyed, then stumbled down the stairs, went quickly to the washroom, and began to throw up violently. He was pale, he was shaking. He saw something up there that scared him to his very own soul, his very own bones. He quickly called his friends, the neighbors, and while all this was going on, the mother decided to look up and take a peek and see what was so terrifying up in that attic. She too succumbed to this sickness of what he saw. She too became ill, pale, shaken, nervous, violently throwing up in the washroom as well. Ingrid did not know what was happening. Just as the friends, the family, and animal control were showing up, Ingrid, brave Ingrid now, decided to face her fears. This time, decided that this was not going to be her end, that she was going to define herself today, that the months of torture, the months of scare tactics that this evil being was sending her was going to end this morning, today, as she walked up that eerie attic ladder, opened up that eerie attic door. She peered through the darkness, only to see that it was full of bats, and it was one big heaping pile of bat guano. It turned out that the attic had a major bat infestation, and that the high-pitched laughter that she had heard was the squeaks of bats. Many, many bats. How many bats? Well, enough to make 7 different piles of giant bat poop. That was the thud sounds. That was the pitter-patter. And sadly, that was that ghostly stain that was forming on the ceiling above her head. The family quickly packed up, moved away, never to see that house again. 2 weeks later, the house was burnt down mysteriously. The father collected the sweet insurance, and they moved into another house, not so far from Scarborough. But she tells me that this eerie event still chills her to the bone, and the sight of a big old pyramid-shaped bat guano statue was indeed the scariest statue she's ever seen in the Scarborough Bluffs. So, are you looking to visit or live in Scarborough? Sure, if you want. And while you're here, if you're looking for some ghost hunting, but then you want to kind of mix up your day and do something else, you know, a little bit of ghost hunting and a little something else, well, got some things for you. The Toronto Zoo, the largest zoo in Canada, with 7 zoographic regions with 5,000 animals, 500 species, and a kids zoo and a water park inside as well. The Toronto Pan Am Games Sports Centre, to get your sport on, with 2 Olympic-sized pool and a diving well, 2,000-seat gym and fitness center, with a climbing wall and a 200-meter track with some sweet fencing house center in it as well. Well, since you're around the Scarborough Bluffs ghost hunting, there's a beach there. The Scarborough Bluffs beach is for boating, hiking, swimming, picnicking, tent pitching, and for peeps of all ages. How haunted is Scarborough, Ontario? Well, there's a lot of bats there, that's for sure. And it's another excuse to use another bat graphic on my YouTube channel, King of the Canadian Hill YouTube. That's where you find me there. Because if you're listening to SoundCloud right now, that's how you find that. But if you're watching the YouTube channel, go to SoundCloud and listen as you go. SoundCloud, King of the Canadian Hill. You want some weird L.A. Kings references and Simpson quotes? Then follow me on Twitter, because that's all I do there, at King Canada Hill. Hill spelled H-I-1-1. If you want to join me on Instagram, sure, I don't do anything on there. Nothing at all, but join nevertheless. How haunted is Scarborough, Ontario? Pretty spooky, but for other reasons. That's about it for now, folks. We'll spook you later, and we'll scare you next time.